I thought people wanted signs. They're telling me, Pat, are you sure? Was it the hands of Mother Teresa? And I said, Mother Teresa, give me a sign. Was it your hands that picked me up from the street of Bombay? And here I get a call.
Hello, and welcome to Kept in Her Heart, where we talk about all things faith-related. I'm your host, Jenny Fuchs. Today, Patrick Norton joins us. He had his beginnings in India, where he was held by Saint Mother Teresa herself, and he's had a very interesting life since then, and he's here to share it with us today. Welcome, Patrick.
Well, thank you for having me, Jenny. And well, my story begins in India. One of the bishops asked Mother, well, why can't you come to Bombay? We have poor people in Bombay. And the Bishop of Bombay said, Mother Teresa said, okay, we'll open up the second one. So they opened up the second missionary charity in Bombay. It was in Baikala. And so my mother, I was an infant, and my mother couldn't take care of me. And so she put me there, hoping the sisters from the convent maybe would come by and pick me up and take care of me. So Mother Teresa and the sisters happened to come by, and there were the hands of Mother Teresa. She picked me up, and I don't recognize because I was an infant. And here she's holding the little baby Jesus, because Jesus said to Mother, I'm in the poor. And she held this little baby Jesus. She found baby Jesus, little baby Jesus, and that little baby Jesus was me. And I know Mother must have smiled at me, and I know I was crying and needed food and something to take care of me. And so Mother took care of me and fed me, and I was baptized into the church, and they named me Patrick because they didn't know who the parents were. There was no document, nothing like that. And so after they took care of me in Baikala in the orphanage, and then certain age they transferred me to the St. Joseph Nursery in Baikala, and there I was taken care of, I think, until the age of 5, and they transferred me to the big boys orphanage and in Bombay, in Dadar. And it was called Our Lady's Home. And then in 1964, Pope Paul VI came and visited that orphanage. And he knelt before each boy and gave them Holy Communion and had breakfast. I know I wasn't around because it was a little later on, we heard of the story and everything. And that's how the orphanage was very well known. And so he had breakfast, and it made world news. Everybody knew about the orphanage, and he donated money to expand it and get in more boys in there. So there were 250 of us, and it was just a boys' home. There were no, they didn't have, some of them didn't have families. Like me, I didn't have both parents. Some of them had one. And so anyway, so I was put in the orphanage and in India. And so while I was growing up in the orphanage, we didn't have a lot to eat. It was in the 1960s, late 1960s, and I should say early 1960s. And the food was very scarce there, but we had Mass said 365 days. And then we prayed the Rosary every evening at 7 o'clock. They had schools there, we can go to classes, and we didn't have much. There were days that we had no food. And I remember that day they said, let's pray the Rosary, let's pray 2 rosaries, and we did. And the food was coming from the United States and West Germany. And I remember we had powder milk, eggs that were, dry powder stuff, that we ate, because that's all they can donate. And so while I was growing up, also we didn't have toys to play with. So sometimes we would go to the building right across, and there was an apartment building, and those people knew that we would come and look for broken toys or coins or anything. And so they would throw stuff out so we can pick it up and take it home to the orphanage. And some days we would go there, we would find money and quarters. And one day I came across a piece of paper. It says USA on it. And I cleaned it. I didn't know where this place was. And so I took it to the priest and I said, Father, look what I found. He said, oh, you won't go there. That's America. You'll never go there. Throw it away. So I kept it anyway, and I had rice. Rice is a glue, actually. It's a natural glue. If you cook the rice, it's very sticky, and you can stick to it. So that's what I did. I stuck it. I slept on the floor. Not everybody had bed. So I stuck it under the bed, and I would pray, because and I would say, Lord, I want to go to that place some days. And sometimes food was very scarce. Sometimes my homework was food. We ate the eraser and pencils. It's true. And, because they could only give us so much. There were days we just didn't have any food, The orphanage just got started and everything. And but there were also good things that happened in the orphanage. We learned our Catholic faith. There were 2 priests and 2 nuns over there that took care of us. The nuns did the sewing of the clothes, and the priest said Mass every day, and it's hard work on them. So they understand. Then every Sunday, I remembered some of the boys had one of their parents come and visit them. So it was once a month they're allowed to do that. I had nobody, So I would watch them like this, and I said, I wish I could have one of my family. And one time I sang this song when I was because I heard this song one time, and I sang this song when I was alone. I said, I'm nobody's child. I'm nobody's child. Nobody wants me. I'm nobody's child. And then, Louis, my friend Louis, he was my best friend, and he would call me and say, Pat, come. And he would invite 4 of us. And his mother got 1 apple, and they would split that apple in 4. And I said, Louis, no, your mother got it for you. And it was the only apple Louis' mother, And then later on, I asked Louis, my best friend, I said, Louis, why did you do that? Why did you split that apple in 4? I said, does your mother have work? No, my mother's a beggar. She begs on the street, and then she brings only the 1 apple she can afford. And I was so heartbroken. And yet Louis was so kind to, give me that apple. And later on, he passed away, and they said he was very kind-hearted. And Louis taught me how to be kind to people, no matter who they are. And so in my whole life, I wanted to be kind. So while I was in the orphanage, there was a war between India and Pakistan, and we were at war with Pakistan. I remember they told all the kids to be outside of the orphanage. And we were frightened because we didn't know the bomb was going to hit us or whatever, because it was pitch dark. We had to turn the lights off. The sirens came on. It was 7 o'clock in the evening, and it started to get pitch dark. We can see the moon and the stars. And I said, Lord, forget about the war. Look how beautiful your world is. You know what he said to me? I'm going to bring you to one of the greatest nations on this earth. And I'm sitting here talking to each one of you. And so my dream came true. The priest came up to me and he says, Pat, you're going to America. I said, really? He said, you're going to have a family. I knew my prayers were answered. And all the boys in that orphanage said to me, oh, Pat, remember me. Don't forget, but send sweets and candies. And I felt so compassionate that they too can find a family somewhere for them. So I was feeling sad for them too. But they said, Pat, remember me when you go. Even I miss my best friend, Louis, who was so kind to me at the orphanage. And at that time, I end up at the airport in Bombay. It was 12 o'clock. I'll never forget, at night. And we were headed to Germany. There was the first stop, and then to the United States. And I remembered when I landed in New York, I saw these tall buildings and my new family that came. My dad had 9 of his own and 5 adopted, well, including us now. 5 adopted, 2 from India, 2 2 from Vietnam and 1 from Hong Kong, and he had 9, and he was Irish. And so he adopted my brother Martin, but he's not my real brother, but we became brothers as we were adopted into the United States. And when I looked at America, I remembered I looked at all the buildings, I said, look how blessed we are to be here in America, to have food, clothing, shelter, friends, and family. And I said, God, most of all, your love for this country, America. And what a gift to bring me here. And you said one day, you told me, one day you'll bring me to one of the greatest nations. I'm right, dear Lord. And how blessed we are to have our Catholic faith, to be living our Catholic faith. And the food that we didn't have, and how now it's so available for me to eat when I'm hungry. And so anyway, when my new family took me to Fairfield, Connecticut, my father was a judge. He adopted 5 and he had 9 of his own. His name was Judge John Henry Norton. And my mom was Marjorie Norton. And I have 6 brothers and 7 sisters from not having any family. And God just gave me this wonderful family. And I had a good time with my family, and I still keep in touch with them. And anyway, when people are wondering how I came to Minnesota. Well, after my dad passed away, I only known him for 8 years. And I was heartbroken, and my mom saw that in me. And so my mom said, Pat, why can't you take a trip to Medjugorje? And I thought, I've never heard of that. But she said, Our Lady's been appearing. And I remember looking back at the orphanage and how much I love Our Lady. That orphanage was dedicated to Our Lady of Fatima. And the only mother I knew in my life at the orphanage when I was alone was Our Lady. And the Pope Paul VI said this to us, to all the children over there. Pope Paul VI said, you know, God put you here because he wants you to study hard and obey your superior. And also he wants you to have a good life out there. And he said, wherever you go, our Blessed Mother will always be with you. And I thought, wow, isn't that nice? And so anyway, I thought of Our Lady there, you know, in Medjugorje. Now, my mom was telling me about Medjugorje, and I thought, okay. So I told the Blessed Mother, well, if I could have off this week, I'll make a trip to Medjugorje. So I did. Everything worked out in a week. Usually it takes a month before they can set all this up, but this was only a week. And so I went to Medjugorje, and I ended up at St. James Church in Yugoslavia, in Croatia. And when I was there, it was so peaceful, and I was just drinking water at the water fountain. All of a sudden, I heard this audible voice. It sounded like a woman voice, and I turned around and I said, hey, you sound American. And she said, I didn't say anything. And so we kind of got talking a little bit, and I said, I'm from Connecticut, and she said she's from Minnesota, Holding Ford, Minnesota. And so I just said just a few things, and then she said if she didn't say anything, then I believe it's the Virgin that connected me with my wife, Sandy, because there was nobody there at the water fountain. It was just her standing there, and I was just drinking water, you know, and I just happened to turn around. And so she gave me a note when I went to church the next day, and she said, meet me at the water fountain. So I did. And 2 hours she didn't show up, and I thought, well, maybe it was just what, I don't know, I couldn't explain it. So I said, another half hour, I'll just stay here. So I stayed for 2.5 hours total. Finally she came, she said, I'm sorry, the bus was late. You know, they came with a different group. And so we exchanged numbers, we kept in touch. And then I came to Minnesota, and I started my business, and the weather was very cold. I'm not used to it. My brothers would, you know, betting on, you know, saying to me, oh, Pat won't last too long. It's too cold for him over there. But I've lived here now for over 33 years. I've lived here in Minnesota, and then I started my business. I'm a painting contractor, and I paint tons of homes throughout all of Minnesota, you know. And then one day somebody asked me, they said, Pat, are you thinking of going to Mother Teresa's canonization? That was in 2016. And I said, well, I'd love to go, but it's expensive, you know, to go to Rome. I've never been to Rome. And so there was Mass said at St. Joseph in Way Park. And anyway, this priest, after his homily, said, if anybody wants to pray for any intention, stand up and go ahead. So I took the opportunity, and I stood up, and everybody looked back, and I said, I'd like to pray that my whole family could go to Rome. And so a week went by, everybody came up to me, did you get any calls? No. And then finally, the next week, I got a call from Kansas. The missionary charity sisters called me. How often do I get a call from them? Never happens. And I said, hello, and the sister said, yes, Pat, you're going to Mother Teresa's canonization. I thought, people wanted signs, you know, they're telling me, Pat, are you sure? Was it the hands of Mother Teresa? And I said, Mother Teresa, give me a sign. Was it your hands that picked me up from the street of Bombay? And here I get a call saying my whole family is going to Rome. Everything is all taken care of, the food, the hotels, everything was all taken care of. And the ticket to go to the Vatican was all taken care of. So I get to Rome, and thousands that are going into the Vatican, and there's a long line. We get up at 5 a.m. We're already in Rome, trying to be there for the canonization of Mother Teresa, the special Mass for her. And so we were packed like sardines. I was right in the middle, and there's so many people around me. And the missionary charity sisters were coming from all over the world, but they're already probably in there. And then all of a sudden, there's a missionary charity sister just one nun comes right out of the crowd and says, you and your family, I want you to take that row over there. But there was no line. And I looked, and I thought, oh, and the sister was gone. So I went there, and you're the security guard with the gun. Come, you and your family. And they took me, this us, and took me up there, and I said, Mother Teresa, it was your hands that picked me up. Even in Minneapolis, when I was visiting the missionary charity sisters there, and they had the clothes of Mother Teresa, you know, that she wore when she came to Minneapolis. And the sisters told me about it, and so I said, Sister, maybe I'll have to ask Mother one more time. Was it her hands that picked me up? And I put my hand on that glass where her clothes is hanging, the jacket. And I said, Mother, was it your hand? And wow, I felt such power that went through me. I could not even explain. It lasted so long. I could barely even walk. It just hit me. And so there was another lady who gave me a ride, and she said, no, let me touch it, Pat. And she said, no, I don't feel anything. So then I knew it was Mother Teresa. So we were right in the front row. We had a chance to be very close to Pope Francis. Today I'm 61 years old. And I have a beautiful family. My mother in India, she did not kill me or anything. She wanted to make sure that someone will take care of me. And I want everyone to know how precious life is. Especially the one when a long time ago, I was on death row. If Mother would have never picked me up, I would have died there. But God was going to use me for a purpose. People always ask about my spiritual life. I always tell them, you know, at one time I'm promoting a saint, and for the cause of sainthood. And the bishop asked me one time, how are you going to promote the cause of this holy nun. And I told Bishop, well, I'm just going to live my Catholic faith. Be the Catholic we're called to be. Live the gospel. And let God work through my simplicity and my nothingness. That's how I'm going to do. So that's what I advise people to do. So when I came here, I went to 1 hour of adoration. I want people to always spend 1 hour of adoration, at least once a week. And confession. That's also part of my spiritual life. You can go once a month, but I go once a week because I want to make sure my soul is clean. Just like we clean our room and we do our laundry and we clean everything around us, why not take a chance, clean your soul? And I know you'll feel the presence of God in you. I feel it every time I go to confession. I can't explain it. The joy that I get out of that gift of confession that Jesus gave to us on the cross. He says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And when Jesus forgave, not just them, He's forgiving us today. Every time we go to Him and say, Lord, we did this wrong, and He forgives us. So anyway, my faith has always been strong. And then when I came to Minnesota, my faith even grew stronger because where I live in St. Cloud, Minnesota, did you know it was the most Catholic diocese in the whole of United States at one time? It's a fact. And did you know the monastery that they have over there, the Benedictine Monastery, was the largest monastery in the whole world? Look how blessed I am to be in that part of Minnesota. And it was in the 1940s, and at one time they had 2,000 nuns. So there's a beautiful history of the Catholics. So I learned most of my faith actually right here. I saw these people, living their faith, and I said to myself, I want what they got. I want that. And wow, I started to go to confession more often and Mass as often and praying the Rosary every day, like Our Lady asked in Fatima. Our Lady asked for the Rosary. So I always tell people the Rosary, pray it every day. The Rosary brings you very close to Our Lady. And I'll tell you, many times I felt her present. And Our Lady loves us all. She's our mother. Jesus gave Our Lady to us on the cross. And so the Bible said that, because I know I have to clear that up. A lot of people are wondering why Mary is part of the Catholic Church. Well, in the Bible it talked about if it wasn't for Mary's yes, Jesus would have never been in the world. It was a woman who said yes, and it was our Blessed Mother who said yes to Jesus. And with Mary, we should say yes to Jesus in our world today. So it was Mary's yes. So I'm glad that our Lord gave us Mary as our mother, and she's always with us. We can talk to her anytime. We can talk to her during the Rosary. We can ask her to intercede for us and our family. Oh, many times people have asked me to pray for them. And many miracles have happened just through praying for them. So if you pray for them, yeah, miracles will happen. You will be surprised. You're just as special as anyone else praying. See? God listens to each person's soul.
So about your adoption, just wanted to ask a couple of questions. So your father who adopted you, do you think, and your brother Norton, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
And you guys were both at the same orphanage.
Yes.
Yeah. How did he pick that orphanage? Is it because it was more well known because the Pope had visited it, or how did he end up choosing that orphanage to adopt?
Now I'm going to go deeper since you asked me that question, and it's all coming. The Lord never picks a professional speaker like me, but that's how it is. Well, my dad. I asked my mom after Dad passed away. I said, "Mom, how did you find out about us?" And it was at Our Lady of Grace Monastery in Guilford, Connecticut. My dad would visit that monastery, and she knew the nuns over there. And every couple of months, my dad would visit the monastery. So one day the sisters at that monastery asked and said, hey, the Pope has visited that orphanage a while ago, and I thought, John, how would you like to adopt some boys from over there? And so my dad, they showed all the pictures of all the boys in the orphanage. And so my mom told me this and said, I would love to take them all, but I could only take 2. And so my dad took a pencil, he closed his eyes, and he said, wherever that pencil landed, that's the boy I want. So my mom got a chance to pick one. He picked Martin, and my dad picked me. And so that's how we got picked, by a pencil point. And so it was Sister Bertrand. Padre Pio actually talked about Sister Bertrand. She was from that Our Lady of Grace Monastery. What my dad told me, she was a very holy nun. Anyway, I had a talk with her, and at one time my brother told me that somebody went to see Padre Pio in 1969 during that time, or maybe earlier. And one of the American guys said to Padre Pio, I came all the way from United States to see you. He said, you didn't have to see me. You could have seen Sister Bertrand. And they never met. That's what I was told. So, wow. Isn't that amazing? That's the monastery where I was discovered. And then another thing that was interesting too, when my dad passed away, my mom had a document of how we were adopted. And my brother Martin, who was not my real brother, but we became brothers, his grandmother put him there. Mm. Yeah. For me, there was no document at all. So the Missionary of Charity sisters said this to me. They said, Pat, Mother Teresa never kept any document. And she was the only one in India that didn't do that. The police did, all the other ones did, the family members or anybody. They were all documented, except mine. In my file, it was, even my brother Martin said, yours are empty. They don't know who put you there. So then they knew that this Missionary Charity sisters told me it was Mother Teresa, the one that was not documented at that time. Now they do, but not now. Mother Teresa was not very well known, and so that's how we were documented, and so that's how I came to the United States.
Thank you. And then also, I know that you have a great relationship with the poor Clares in the St. Cloud area. How did you get to know them?
Oh yes, the poor Clares. When I first came to Minnesota, you got to remember now, when you go to a newer area, it's like starting all over again. Right. And so I came, and the only people I knew was my wife, and later on my kids came. But I was at St. Wendell Bazaar in Holdingford, Minnesota, at St. Wendell Church. And they had a bazaar, my first bazaar I've ever been, really. And so I'm going there, and I heard a lady talking about the weather and saying, look how nice it is, but look, all around it's raining. And they said, yeah, we called the Poor Clares Sisters. And I said, oh, and I asked the lady, who are they? Oh, they're in Sauk Rapids. So I told my wife, I said, I'd like to get to know the sisters, because my dad always knew the sisters in Connecticut, and I've always visited with my dad, and they made this homemade fudge. And so I always went there for the fudge, and my family back home would say, hey, Pat, bring some for us. Not everybody went with my dad. So I said, okay. By the time we got back home, the fudge was all gone. We ate it. But anyway, so I called them the first time. I said, hi, yeah, and they were so nice and so gentle. And they said, what can we do for you? And I said, I'm new in this town, and I said, my name is Patrick, and I didn't tell them much about my background. And I just called them every evening, to be honest, because I had nobody else that I knew. So the sisters were so available for me. They always we didn't talk long. It was just like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever they can give me. And at the same time, they were grooving me to learn more of my Catholic faith. The confession came along, and adoration, and all this, the beauty of our Catholic faith came. They were sharing this with me, and I was embracing a little at a time, while the sisters were just throwing it at me, and always saying, "The Lord is with you, Pat. You're doing great, and you're doing wonderful." And so as time went on, I've known them for, wow, it's a long time, for over 30 years. And they're my family today. And I told Sister, you'll always will be my family. And I said, how many people adopted me?
Indeed.
Yeah, I said, I've been adopted so many times. Mother Teresa adopted me in a way, took care of me. And so the poor Clares in Sauk Rapids, Minnesota inspired me. And I remember one time they came up to me, they said, "Pat, could you pray that they'll get more vocation?" And I said, you know what? If any one of you listening out there, any young women that love the Lord so much, and the Lord is calling you, I would consider the poor Clares. I've been in their monastery, I painted their monastery, and they sing like angels. Beautiful, wow. I remember I have a painting contract, and they asked me to paint in there, and they were singing, and I said, "Sister, I didn't have to turn the radio for music." You guys were singing beautiful. Did it bother you? No, actually, I did a better job when you guys were singing. So anyway, if there's any young people that would like to join them, give them a call. Or I know another monastery too, the Benedictine Monastery. They're very, I got to know the sisters. I worked for them. I did painting for 4 years, and they are also wonderful. So the Benedictine Monastery was near to me. Sometime I would go to their monastery. Remember, the Poor Clare is a cloister, so I can't really do what I'm doing at the Benedictine Monastery, where I would go to the grotto, and there was a beautiful statue of Our Lady, and I love Our Lady. And I never told anyone this, but I'm telling you, everyone, for the first time, I would go to Our Lady, well, besides some of the video they have interviewed me with. And every year on Mother's Day, I would go to the statue of Our Lady at St. Benedict Monastery in St. Joseph, Minnesota. And I would put the rose of Our Lady, and I would say, "You're the best ma in the whole world. I love you, Mother." And I would put the rose. I wouldn't tell anyone. Every year I would put that in there. And I still do that today. The Pope was right. Pope Paul VI was right. He said, "Our Lady will always be with you no matter where you go." And I know He's going to be with all of you out there. If you ask her to be, she will. Even if you don't, she's still your mother. Jesus gave Mary to us. So anyway, so that's how my story is. I can go on, how it is.
Yes, well, I think that's a wonderful place to stop and just reflect on how much Our Lady loves us, and how much she loves each one of us, and she's calling us to something special. And she's clearly called you to something special, though. So thank you for sharing that.
That's right, yeah.
And thank you guys, and keep asking our Lord, keep asking our Blessed Mother, what are you being called to, and how is God asking you to serve? And if you follow it, you'll find joy. Thanks for watching.